All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our workshop on augmented reality. Just before we get started, I just wanted to do a audio and visual check. So can everyone let me know if they can hear me and see me in the chat? Or if anyone can let me know? All right, perfect. We got one yes. All right, so if everyone can just keep their microphones muted for now and your videos turned off as well, we'll be recording the session. So if while we're doing the workshop, if you can't follow us along, you can always watch the recording later and you'll find it on our social media. You can also use the chat function to talk amongst yourself about the workshop, or if you have any questions, you can ask that in the chat as well. And myself and another teammate will be looking at the chat to answer your questions. So
I'm sure. Should we just give it a minute or two, just to let a few more people join if they have to?
yeah, we'll do that. So while we're waiting, I'm just going to open one of our polls. If everyone can let us know, have you followed the setup instructions that we sent in the email yesterday? All right, that looks good. Some yeses, mostly some of it. So looks like people have gotten started with the setup, but we've still got a few steps left. That's fine. Okay, so I'll just explain what things you need to have set up before we start the workshop. And while we wait for a few more people to join, we'll just do that now. So before we actually get started with the workshop, you need to make sure you've installed the Unity software and the Unity Hub on your computer. You also need to make sure you've created a personal Unity account and downloaded the supporting files that were provided in the email. I'll put the link to that again in the chat if you need that. All right, so we'll get started now. So first of all, we'll just talk a little bit about who we are as a society. Then after that, we'll look at what is Unity exactly and what it's used for before we dive into the technical part of today's session, which will be led by one of my teammates, Michael. So the first part of the workshop will be a 1-hour session where we covered the basics of Unity. So you'll learn how to set up a project and then get started with Unity. Then after a short break, we'll have the second part, which will be a introduction to AR, which is augmented reality, and we'll teach you how to create an AR app, which will be a model of old Joe that you can make anywhere in your room. So I hope everyone's got most of those things set up, and let's kick things off. So my name's Ramsha. I'm the co-founder and current president of the Virtual Reality Society at Birmingham. Our society aims to provide a platform for students, academics, and external organizations to learn about immersive technology and to work collaboratively together on innovative and immersive projects. I'm joined today by my teammates, Michael. Michael, do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm a first year computer science student, and I'm also the Unity lead in the UBVR Society.
So Michael's going to be taking us through the technical parts of the workshop. Then you're also joined by Ryan.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm first year computer science and I'm the events rep for UBVR.
Cool. Thank you. So Ryan and I will be monitoring the chat. So if you've got any questions for us, feel free to put them in the chat at any point and we'll get back to you. We're also joined here today by Ed Key from the CTL team. He's also one of the organizers of today's session. The CTL is also where our lab is based. So you can see a few pictures on the right-hand side of our lab. And we've got lots of cool immersive technology there, which will hopefully be open sometime this year once campus is opened again. So just a little intro of what is Unity. The Unity is a software. It's a cross-platform game engine, which can be used to create 3-dimensional, 2-dimensional virtual reality and augmented reality games, as well as simulations and other experiences. It's used across various industries, from the video gaming industry to film, automation, engineering, and construction. So it's used for a lot of things. And as you can see here, it's also highly praised by the new US president. With Unity, we can do great things. So that's why we mostly focus on using the Unity software to create applications in our society. So this is where we have our second poll. Can you let us know, have you ever used Unity before? And if so, how much experience do you have? Right, so it looks like there's a lot of beginners here today who've never heard of Unity before, and some people who have heard a little bit about Unity. So I hope this workshop will be useful for it, and useful to teach you how to get started with Unity. So yeah, now I'll just hand over to my teammate Michael, who will be taking you through both parts of the workshop, where he covers the Unity basics and the AR app. Michael, you want to take over?
Yep. So first, what you need to do is just make sure you open Unity Hub. You'll see it just looks like this. So if I just remove these, this is what it will look like for you. And just to make sure you're on projects, and if you click on new, you'll get this window open up. So if you just make sure you're on 3D, and you can just name your project whatever you want just to get started. So if I just name it AR Workshop Project and click Create. Feel free to ask in the chat if you have any problems about anything, and then one of us will get back to you. So this will just open it. It might take a while just to compile and open it up, but that's done. It'll be all set up. If it says a license invalid for your when you try create, make sure you have a personal account on Unity, because that might be the easiest way to do it. And this is what the default layout of it looks when you start up a new project. As everyone who's following, are you in it, or are you still waiting for the project to be created? Oops. I mean, you ask if you can use Unity 2021. You might be able to, but if there are any problems with it, with like following along to the AR stuff, that might be down to the version. But for the Unity basics and stuff, it's pretty much the same regardless of your Unity version. So this slide is just about how you can actually configure the interface of Unity. So when I get started, the way I do it is I normally just drag the project one into like below the hierarchy here. And then I just bring the console to the right-hand side. So it just forms a window here. And that just makes it a bit more organized. There's these three little dots in the project window that if you just click on and you set it from 2-column layout to 1-column layout, it might just make the project window more simple for you to follow, because then it's just a bunch of folders. So as you can see here, if you can just drag the project one into here, or you can just have the interface any way you want, really.
If I can interrupt for just 1 second.
Yeah.
I forgot to tell everyone. So this is a follow along workshop, but it'll be best if you watch when Michael's doing anything. And then after that, we'll put a slide on with all the steps that he's done at each step and give you a few minutes to follow along. So just watch him first, and then we'll pause and let you do the same thing. All right. Yep. Go ahead, Michael.
So I'm going to go on to the next slide now. So now I'm just going to talk about how the what each window actually does in Unity. So this red box here on the left is the hierarchy. It contains all of the objects that a scene in Unity has, and a scene in Unity is just like, it's like a level in the game where each scene has its own different objects, different stuff, different enemies. So that just the hierarchy just contains all the objects for a specific scene that you're opened up. The project view on the bottom left one, it contains all of the assets and the files, stuff related to the entire project, such as models, textures, and scripts. The scene view here, it just allows you to see what's happening in your scene at, say, when you're building it or when you're actually running it. So you can also use it to organize, say, game objects. So if you bring a cube into Unity, you can just move it around using the scene view. The game view is what you can see through the camera of the game, basically. So for example, if you were making a first-person shooter, the game view lets you see how it would actually look when you're actually playing the game. Just quickly, if you want to have the game view as I have, you could just click on the game window here, just drag it, and then when it's to the right hand side like this, you just let go, and it brings them side by side. And you can also rescale it however you want. The inspector here, it allows you to basically just change the properties of objects. So say you make a cube or something, you can use this to change its position, to change what things it has, what color it is. And the console here, it can allow you to see any errors with your code, or if there's anything you want to test by printing it out to the console. That's very helpful. Okay, going to go to the next slide. Now I'm going to teach you how to make folders in Unity. So folders are what the project view has here, where you can organize your assets that you import much better than just having everything out in one folder. So in project, you just right click on the assets folder, and then this list will open up. And if you just hover over create and click folder, it will create a new folder for you. And then you can name it whatever you want. So if I just name it, say, materials, and I press enter, that will create a new folder right here. So I'm just going to do the same again. Right click on assets, hover over create, and go to folder. Models. The materials are just, so you can change what color any object in Unity is or what texture it has. And the models are just any models from your computer that you can bring into Unity, and then it can use it to display it in the scene. I'll make another one called scripts. That's just to hold all of the scripts and programs that you create in Unity. If I right click again, create folder, I'll just name it textures to hold all of the images. And I'll create a final one just called prefabs. And I'll go later into what prefabs actually are. So this is the slide saying how you do it.
Yeah, so we'll give everyone 2 minutes or so to follow the instructions. Once you've done it, if anyone could just let us know in the chat when you're ready to go, and then we'll go to the next step.
And remember, if there's any problems that you guys have, or if there's something you want explained in more detail, just feel free to say it in chat, and I'll definitely help you. Okay, gonna go into the next slide now. This slide's about actually creating game objects in Unity. So these are just the objects that will actually go into the scene. So if we just start off with creating a cube. So if you just, there's this empty space in the hierarchy window on the top left. So if you just, underneath main camera and directional light, you can just right click. And you'll see it opens this list. So there's the 3D object, and you can just click on cube, and that brings a new cube into Unity. Like so. And then to actually change the values, you can use the inspector. So if I just go over here to the hierarchy, right click and create another 3D object and a cube. This time, instead of it being called cube, I'm going to name it plane. And I'm going to fiddle with these values to change the size, rotation, and scale of it on the right under transform. So say if I go 0, -2, that puts it down, and 0. And the scale changes the just how big it is on each axis. So the X, Y, and Z. So if I go 10, I'll keep Y as 1 because Y is the upwards axis, like so. So if I change that to 1 and put the Z to 10, that creates a plane below the cube. Okay, moving on to the next slide. If anyone who's following along can't keep up, just say and then I can go back for you. So now that the game objects have been created, we're going to create materials. So the materials, basically, you can apply it to an object, and that just changes how it looks, basically. So what I'm going to do is in the project window, and then in the materials folder, I can just right click. And then when it opens the list, I can hover my mouse over create. And this second list in the middle, there's a value called material. So if you just click on that material thing, it will say new material, and I'm just going to name it cube material, but really it doesn't really matter what you call it. You can just call it anything you want. So basically right click on materials, hover over create and click on material here, and it will create a new material. If you want to rename it, you can just right click on it, on the actual material itself, and just rename it here. To actually change what the what color or what image or texture it has, you can click on the cube material, and then the inspector here to the right hand side of albedo, there's like a little box with a white box. If you just click on that, it opens a color wheel up, and you can just color it to whatever color you want. So if I want to have it red, you can see its work now because the preview of it shows a red circle. And finally, to apply it, you can either drag the cube material onto the cube here, or drag it onto the cube in the hierarchy. And you'll see when it changes red, it means everything's worked. Okay, on to the next slide. In this section, I'm going to talk about what components are in Unity. So components are sort of like, they're just properties that you can add to objects, and it controls how they behave, what sort of functionality they have. So when you click on the cube, you'll see this sort of boxes. So each one of these highlighted sections are components. So the transform component, it can hold the position, rotation, and scale of the object that's attached to, and this component can also be accessed by script as well. So if you want to program in, say, the cube moving, that's what the transform component is for. Another one is the mesh renderer. So it just holds information about how to render the object that it has. So say if I go into Unity, you don't have to do this, but you can just watch. And then if I untick mesh renderer, you'll see that the object's still there, but now it's not being displayed at all anymore. And then I can just tick that again to make it come back. The box collider is another one. It allows the game object to collide with other objects, or it can be also used to, so if something collides inside of the box, of the cube or whatever, it will register that as a collision. So that can be useful, say, if you want a character in the game to enter an area, and if you have it set to detect the collision, you can do stuff with that. Now on this slide, I'm going to be showing how to use the rigid body and the box collider to create a physics object in Unity. So a physics object is just an object that can interact as if it was an actual real object. So it would fall down with gravity, it will collide with other things, it can roll around if it's a sphere. So to do this, I'm just going to make sure cube is being clicked on. So you can either click on it in the hierarchy or in the scene view. And in the inspector, I'm just going to scroll down until it says add component. And when it says add component, I'm going to click on add component. And in the search bar that appears, I'm just going to type rigid body and click on the first one that appears. And you'll see that it's worked because the new rigid body component will be added underneath the other components in the inspector. Yeah, and when that's done, you can press the play button at the top just to start the game basically. And you can see it's a physics object because it just falls with gravity. And say if I just go to top left and click on the rotate button instead of the move button, I can also rotate it and it will react accordingly. If we go back to movement, you can see it worked because if I remove the rigid body and if I click play, you'll see it doesn't move anymore. That's because it doesn't have a rigid body anymore. So if I just re-add that quickly. Same thing with the box colliders. Box colliders are basically what stops the objects from passing through each other. I'll just show you right now. If you click on play, you'll see that the cube just falls through because I've disabled this box collider. So that's that on creating a physics object. Also, remember in Unity, if you've pressed play at the top and any edits you make while still in play mode, don't save. So if you click on play and then you insert a bunch of new things because you've forgotten you're in play mode, and then you exit out of that, it won't save anything. So just make sure if you make any changes that you want saved, you're not in play mode. Does a physics object have material properties like elasticity? Yeah, so you can change you can have specific stuff like elasticity, and you can also, in the rigid bodies, there's a bunch of settings. So say if you want to change the mass, because if you increase the mass and say two objects collide, it will treat it as if it's like a physics simulation where the one with the largest mass will have more force and stuff. There's also drag. So if you want to have a frictionless cube, you can do that. You can also turn off gravity. Yeah. So yeah, it can have material properties like that. We go into the next slide now. This slide's about how to actually move the camera in Unity. So this is helpful for when you want to look around the scene or you want to make changes to the scene. It's good to move the camera around. So if I go into Unity, if I hold the middle mouse button and just move it around, this basically drags the camera perpendicular to where you're looking at. So as you can see, if you move it, it moves like that. You can also zoom in and zoom out. And if you can use the middle mouse with this just to basically pan about. Another one is the F keybind. So if you click on a cube and say you press F, it will focus it onto the cube. I can do the same thing with, say, the directional light. If I press F or the main camera, it just focuses it onto that specific object. Also, if you're focused onto an object by pressing F, and then if you hold Alt and press left click, you can just sort of rotate about the object you're focused on. Just like so. So that's helpful for if you want to see different parts or whatever of the scene. And then you'll see that there's this sort of axis gizmo in the top right of the scene view here. So these cones can basically snap your camera to a specific axis. So say I'm not focused on anything and I just press this, it will focus the camera to the X axis. Do the same for the Y and the Z, and also these. And you can also do the same for when you're focused on an object. So if I focus onto a cube and press X, that focuses on that direction, that on that. And finally, there's the, in the center, there's this sort of cube you can see. If you click on that, it changes the camera between perspective and orthographic mode. So perspective mode is this one, where stuff at the back it looks further away, whereas in orthographic mode, there's no displacement at all. So orthographic mode is good for, say you want to build a scene and you want every wall to line up perfectly. Whereas perspective is when you want to see what it actually looks like in game. Okay, now we're going to go on to the programming part, basically. This is just going to be a quick sort of run through it, so don't worry if you don't have any programming experience. We're going to be doing a poll now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if everyone can let us know, do you have any prior programming experience, or is this the first time you'll be seeing code? Right. So it looks like a lot of people here do have some experience with coding. So we should be able to follow along. But as always, if you do get stuck at any point, just feel free to ask us in the chat. Back to you, Michael.
Okay, so this section's about creating a script component. So a script component is a new component you can add to any object, and it can allow you to run code from that object. So say if we go back to the cube, if we click on the cube, and if you scroll down to add component like last time, instead of writing a rigid body, you can write new script. And when you do that, you can also write a name on it. So I can just write, say, test script. Make sure it's all one word, like so. And then I'm just going to create an add. And then you'll see that it's here when it works. So just make sure you click on cube, add component, type in new script, click on it, type a name. Here it says it can only consist of A to Z and numbers. So just to not have any errors, make sure you just write the name correctly. And you'll see it also appears in the project view here, outside of any folder. So just to organize the project, I'm just going to drag that into the scripts folder. Like so, and then you can see when you open the folder, it will appear here. And when you've done that, you can double click on the test script and you can open it up in Visual Studio or whichever code environment you're running. So this is just what a basic sort of a new script looks like. So I'm just going to have this until you guys have done it. Okay, so see this icon is for C#, and C# is the programming language that Unity uses. So if I just go on to the next one, this is what you see when you open a new script in Unity. So it has lines on the side to show which number. The public class is just the name of the script that you've created. So for instance, mine's called test script. So this is what it shows here. We have two functions here. So a function is just, a function's like, you can write code inside a function, and then if you call a function, you can call it several times without having to write the code inside a lot. You can just write the code once and call it several times. So that's really helpful for saving lots of time and space in the code. So this start one, it's called start, and when you write start and then with these two brackets, exactly like so, the Unity will recognize that and then call that function at once, only when you click play. And this update one, that one, any code inside of here is ran once per frame. And I'm pretty sure you can change the frames in the Unity project settings anyways. So if you want to change the frame rate to whatever you want, you can also do that. And that changes how many times the code's ran. There's also these double slashes here. These are called comments. And you can use it to just talk about what your program does, or for each line you can write. If you write a line that's a bit confusing, or you wanna be able to remember what it does, you can do a comment and describe what your code does. The script actually ignores comments, so it's just for you to be able to talk about your program. The using lines are basically just, they bring in libraries from that other people have made, or in this instance Unity made. So this just allows you to be able to use other people's functions and methods and stuff just to save you time, basically. So it's very helpful to do that. We're going to be doing that for the AR section as well, because there'll be other people will be writing libraries with very useful code to save us some time. So I'm just going to create a new basic test function. So if I just name it my function, I'm going to show you how to do it here. So if I just zoom in here, I'm going to create a new void, and then my function, open close bracket, and then the curly brackets. Basically, the curly bracket is what it tells the function where the code begins inside it and where it ends. So you can see for start that it starts here and ends here, and same for class. The class of test script starts here and it ends here. So I just need to make sure everything is inside the these two outermost curly brackets. So I'm going to use this function in Unity called debug.log. Open close bracket, and inside I'm just going to write a test message. So if I write, say, this function prints out a message, and then all lines on Unity that aren't followed by curly brackets need to end with a semicolon. This just tells the program where the line starts and where it ends. And as you can see, it's sort of grayed out, this function. That's because we need to call it from somewhere first. So to call it, I'm just going to do my function, open close bracket, and then colon. And now when you run your code, this code will run first, and then it will call the function once. So just to test that, I'm going to wait for it to compile, going to click play, and it will see it prints out a message here into the console. I'm going to also talk about just the basic variable types in Unity and in C#. So a variable is it's sort of like a container for data, or it's just somewhere you put a piece of data in, and then the program can use that variable to basically just, if it needs to call it several times, it has a reference to what the data is. And you can also do cool things like add variables together if they're from the same data type, stuff like that. So the first one, it's just BOOL, is a Boolean. So a Boolean is it's basically a data type where the only things you can store for it are true or false. So is true is the name of the variable, and then you do equal false, and that puts false inside of the is true variable. So say you can either do it for false, or if it was true, it would put true inside this Boolean variable. The same for the string. String is just like here, there's speech marks and then text inside. So it's basically sort of like a message or a name of something. You can store this name in speech marks, and it's stored inside the A string variable. So A string is just the name of the string variable. Same for int. An integer is just a whole number. So it sets 1 inside the myInt. It can be any whole number really. So if you just want, say, 500, that can be stored inside. A float is like an integer, except that it has decimals. So the myFloat variable equal 3.1415 f, and this f1 is just tells Unity that this is a float instead of an integer. So that's just the standard thing that Unity does. I'm also going to go through if statements. So if statements are basically, if I just go here, if it is raining, and then if it is raining, if it's true, it will go to this line, and if it's false, it will go onto the else line instead. So it just allows your code to take different branches depending on what conditions are met. So what this does is at the start of when your program starts, it will call this range check function. And here this is called a parameter. And you're basically just putting true. You're saying it is raining. You're setting that to true. And then from then on, every time it is raining is being used in here, it's set to true. So you're going if it is raining, which is true. So yeah, it is true because it's checking if it is raining is true, and it is. It will print this out to the program. You don't have to have this second else, but you can if you want to just make sure you cover all bases. So if you call it again, rain check, but you put false instead of true, it will set it is raining to false instead. And it will go through here. It will say if it is raining equals true, but it doesn't equal true because it's false. So it will go false. If false equals true, it doesn't. So it will go else because that's the only other thing. And there it will print, we need some sunscreen. So these are very useful for just if you want to have branching things, if you want your program to make decisions, stuff like that. Here we're just going to take a quick break because we finished the Unity basics and now is on to the AR workshop. Just going to take a quick 5-minute break.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to go and grab a drink or a snack, feel free to. Otherwise, if you have any questions, we're still here. So feel free to just open your microphones, or if you want to put it in the chat, that's fine as well. Can I ask you a question, Michael?
Yeah.
How did you get started with using Unity and making things for virtual reality?
For me, it was I think I was in year 12 at school, and I had a work experience with a company that uses Unity, and they made VR sort of simulations and stuff in it. So to prepare for that, I started learning Unity, and then going there also helped me just understand how to use it and stuff. And then I just sort of made my own projects in it. And since I own a VR headset, I can make VR projects for it as well.
Cool.
Which
So
I find
you
very fun.
basically taught yourself?
Yeah, for the most part. I also looked at YouTube tutorials. I find them very useful because it will go through step by step how something works.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources that are available online for free. What about you, Ryan?
Oh, it probably was in maybe year 8, year 9. There was a coding club going on at school, so I thought I'd get involved. I learnt C#, and just from there, I've just been working on projects every now and then. So,
Oh,
yeah.
you got an early start. Nice, nice. Right. So while we're just waiting for everyone to come back, if anyone's having a break, I'm just going to open up a few polls. So for the augmented reality application section, we just want to find out what device are you using, and have you got more than one monitors to look on? So we'll be launching the first poll now. If you can all let us know. Right. So it looks like we've got quite a few iOS users here. Um, I think we'll start with the second part of the workshop now. Just before we go on, Ryan, do you just want to explain a little bit about the building on iOS?
Yeah, so at the end, there'll be two options to whether to build for iOS or Android. In order to build it on iOS, you will need to go ahead in your own time and go through a few steps. So you'll need to join the iOS developer program, which is currently $99 a year, and that allows you to then, using Xcode, deploy your app. So I'll put a link in chat of the steps that you'd need to go through in order to get it onto iOS. For anyone who wants to in their own time, maybe look into that. Here, I've just put it in chat.
Yeah, we're still trying to find a way if there's, a much easier way to get the apps on Android devices. Sorry, Apple devices. So if anyone does know, feel free to let us know, or join our Discord channel, and we can discuss this much more later because that would be so much easier for like all of us. All right, Michael, I will hand it back to you. I think we can start now.
So this section is going to be about creating an AR app in Unity. So if we just get the video up here. So this is how it works. It finds a plane on your floor or anywhere, and if you press the screen, it can bring like an old Joe model into your room, basically, like so. Sort of like, say, Pokemon Go, how that did it. So to do this, I'm just going to go and set up the AR packages. So I'm going to go into Window at the top, Package Manager. So Window Package Manager. And you'll see that there's a few packages here. I'm going to click on Packages in Project here in the top left of that window and click on Unity Registry instead of in Project. This will change it from just the projects just the packages in your project to all ones that you can install. And I'm just going to find AR Foundation, click on Install, and it will do its thing and install it. And you'll see that it works when it has a tick here saying you've downloaded it. Also for AR Core XR plugin, I'm going to install that. And the same for ARKit XR plugin. I press install. This is just so I have like, because it brings functions and stuff that don't require me calculating every single AR thing, and it can make life a lot easier. And that's done. All three of them will have ticks underneath, like so. Okay. The next section is about creating a prefab in Unity. So a prefab it's basically, you can take any game object from your hierarchy in the top left, and you can make it into a prefab. And the prefab allows you to take that custom object and you can put it back into your scene just from the project view. So I'll show you in a bit why this is very useful to do in Unity. So first, I'm just gonna go to the project section. I'm gonna right click on models and click on import new asset. And here I'm gonna go to my files and find the old Joe model. And I'm gonna double click on it, and that will bring it into Unity. So it's just called oldjoe.obj, and it will have an importing section. And when it works, you'll see it's inside the models folder. So just right click on models, import new asset, find it, and double click on it to bring it in. Now I'm gonna click on old Joe here and just drag it into the scene. And you'll see that there's this sort of basic model, but there's no materials on it just yet. So when you've brought it in, the next thing you need to do is right click on materials, go to create material, and I'm gonna just name it old Joe material. And now to actually give this material a texture, I need to import an image as well. So I'm gonna right click on textures, import new asset. I'm gonna find this old Joe texture here that was provided in the GitHub link. And I'm going to bring that in here. So just right click, textures, import new asset, double click audio texture, bring that in. Now to put the texture onto the material, we need to click on the audio material. And in the top right, you see next to albedo and where this color wheel was, to the left of it, there's this box here. To put the image on, you just drag it into here, into this box to the left of albedo and let go. And you'll see that it works when the texture's been applied to it. So now this material has the audio texture for this model as well. So to actually put it on, click on the audio material, drag it on and put it on here. And you'll see that it's now worked. Oh, and also to actually make it into a prefab, I'm going to click on it. I'm going to change the scale. I'm going to set it to 0.3 just to make it smaller. See, it's much smaller now. And to make it into a prefab, I drag it from the hierarchy here. I drag it into prefabs. It will say, do you want to create an original prefab or a variant? I'm going to click on original prefab to create a new prefab of it. And you'll see it works, because now you can create several, just drag them into the scene here. So here's just the instructions on how to do that. Okay. Now in this part, I'm just going to generate the lighting for the scene really quickly. This is so it stops looking just so like dull and dark and actually looks normal. So to do this, I'm just going to find the lighting window. So in window, this is where all of these like window things are, you can get them from basically. So if I go to rendering and click lighting, it'll create a new lighting window by going to window, rendering, lighting. And I can move this anywhere I want, but I might just click on the tab here and just drag it to the right hand side of inspector, just to make it easier to use, because you can switch between them. When you've done that, just click on generate lighting and you'll see that it's creating some lighting here. And now the model's actually being illuminated properly. One more thing, if you want to change how strong the lighting is, you can go into environment. And there's this intensity multiplier. It just changes how strong the light from every direction is. So if I want to have no light from the environment, or if I want to have a lot, I'm going to change it to say 1.8. You can also do the same with the directional light. So the directional light is sort of like the sun. To do that, you have to go on the inspector, and then you can put a specific value for the intensity. So if you want to have it really bright, like so, or if you want to have it no light from that at all, and just light from the environment. I'm going to set it to 1. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is add the actual AR objects. So these are what the packages provide for us. So I'm just going to go to the hierarchy. I'm just going to clear everything here except from the directional light. So everything except the directional light you can just delete. You can even delete the old Joe prefab because it's here. Actually, I'm going to explain what is good about prefabs. So say if you have this prefab of old Joe right here. Let me just put a bunch around. And if you want to change, say you want all of them to have a different scale. So instead of all of them being 0.3, you want say you want all of them to be 1. This will change the size of every one of them instead of just having to go through all of them across different scenes and just changing the size. It's also good because you can just bring a new one in if you want to have a new one instead of having to bring a new model in, bring the new material in, and so on, and then changing the scale. So I'm just going to delete it so it's just the directional light in here. And I'm going to right click on the hierarchy. When it opens the list, I'm going to go to XR, click on AR Session Origin, and that brings a new, that controls the how it calculates the AR and simulates an AR camera. And the same for XR AR Session. So I just need these two in. After that, I'm going to go to AR Session Origin. I'm just going to click on Add Component and type AR Raycast Manager, I mean. Click on it and just bring that in. And the same with AR Plane Manager. So this just controls where it searches for if there's a plane on your ground somewhere that you can project the model onto. Okay, moving on. I'm going to create one other placement indicator. So I'm basically creating this little thing here. It tells you where you can actually place something down in the real world, basically. So just do that now. I'm going to right click, go on create empty. I'm just going to name it placement indicator. So this creates a new empty game object, and inside that I'm just going to right click on the placement indicator, go to 3D object and select a quad. So a quad is just is basically a plane where you can put a 2D image on. And you see that it's sort of rotated this direction. So if you just go to click on it, go to transform and change the X component of the rotation to 90 degrees, it will set it upwards. And now we need to actually bring the image for the indicator. So I'm going to import new asset on the textures and find this target or whatever image you want to use. So by right clicking on textures, import new asset and bring it in. To actually place it onto the plane, I need to create a new material. By right clicking on materials, create material. I'm going to name it indicator material. And like I did with the old Joe, you just drag the target into the indicator material. And if you drag the indicator material onto the plane, you'll see that it's not transparent, and that's because the shader here is set to a standard one. So if we just type into it transparent, it brings up a bunch of settings like if it's a UI, if it's lit or unlit. I'm just going to pick the first one. And then there we go. It will create a new placement indicator that is also transparent. I'm going to also change the size of it to say, by clicking on placement indicator, change the size to 0.3 on all axis. And this just makes it smaller. So It just helps because when you have it in your room, if it's a much bigger indicator, it means you need more space to place something down. Okay. Next, I'm going to add a controller. So the controller just basically controls how the placement indicator moves along and where it's placed, and also it controls how audio is placed, and if you press on the phone, it will place it down. If you place on it somewhere else, it will move it there. So I'm going to go right click on create empty. I'm going to name it controller. And I'm going to create an add component. I'm going to create a new script. I'm going to call it, just make sure you call it AR placement. Like so, capital ARP and then placement. Create an add. And then I'm going to move the script into the script section. I'm also going to double click on the AR placement to open it in Visual Studio. And I'm just going to delete everything that's in it right now. We've provided in the GitHub link, there's like a text file called AR placement. So if you just open that and just copy everything inside it, so I just did Control A to select everything, and then I can just copy it, paste it in. We've provided this because it can get a bit complicated having to write out everything just by hand, but I'm going to go through it in a bit. Okay.
Yeah, I
So
think
before
Michael, oh, sorry.
Hmm?
I was just saying, Michael's just gonna go over briefly over the code. We wanted to keep it simple for this workshop, but if you are interested in learning about how to do the actual coding to make the AR app, follow us on our social media. We'll probably be covering this in one of our future workshops where we go more in depth with how to actually do all the steps in the code and like what
Yeah.
each step means.
So I'm just going to keep it very brief. So basically, this section just brings in the functions that other people have written. So there's some AR functions or data types you can use that we use in this. This section, the public game object, it just means that when we do that and we save it, and if we go back to the controller, we now have fields basically that we can bring in. So this AR object to spawn is we can just, any model we put in there, the script will use that and spawn that into the scene. And with placement indicator, we just give it a reference to the placement indicator here so that the script's able to move it because it will have the transform of it. The private game object, this just keeps a track of the copy of the template we give it. And this copy can be moved around and whatever, and the program uses this variable to keep track of that. This is just just some of the AR variables. It just manages the AR and stuff. We create a Boolean. This just checks if if we're allowed to place down an old Joe or not. And there's this method called start. So when it starts, it just sets the spawned object to null because the object's not supposed to exist at the start because we haven't pressed down anything yet. It just sets up the AR manager. Every frame, basically what the script's doing is it's just checking if the OJ model, if it exists and you pressed, and if the OJ model doesn't exist and you pressed on the screen, it will call this function to create a new one. So it's basically going to here and it's just creating a new function. I mean, a new model, and it's using this function to do so. If an object already exists and you've pressed down on the screen, it will just move the transform.position of it to the placement pose. So the placement pose is just the where the AR calculates where you've pressed on the screen in relation to where the plane is on the floor in the real world. So that's just changing the rotation and position. And then after that, it's just calling these two functions. So this function basically calls this. So all of this code is basically like going here, being placed here every time, every frame. And then same for the update placement indicator. It's just here, all of this code's being called every frame as well. So the update placement pose, that just controls more of the AR stuff, such as it basically calculates where the placement pose is based on like if you point your camera, say this is a plane in your room and then this is your camera, it will just say like from here it's checking where the plane is and then this position is being calculated, and then from there it will place the placement indicator and then create the OJ model on top. This update placement indicator, that all that does is it checks if something's allowed to be placed down, and if it's allowed to be placed down, it will move this placement indicator around like so. And if it's not allowed, it will just set it to active to false, and that just stops it from being rendered. And then that's about it for the script so far. So this next section is just about setting up final touches for Android. So I might just go on these slides for a bit just because it's recorded, but since you have iPhones mostly, there's different steps involved. This is just for Android. Oh yeah, actually, let me just go back. To make sure that everyone needs to go on controller, and then here, the AR object to spawn, just drag the audio prefab in, not the model, but the prefab. And it basically, like when I drag a new one in, oh, actually, let me change that back so it's normal size. It's doing what I did when I, hang on, oops, delete that. Every time I bring a new one in, oh, you see it didn't update. That's because I was changing this one. I was changing the scale of this one, but if you want to change the scale of everything, you click on here on the prefab, do it, and that will change it everywhere. Like how I drag the prefab out, the script can do the same. That's basically why you need to provide it in the controller. And in the placement indicator, you just drag a reference to the placement indicator, so you just drag it in. And then that's done. So for Android, you just go over to Edit, Project Settings in the top, and then on Player, there's this tab for Android where you just click on Vulkan and you click the minus, and that removes it because it's not necessary. And you go on multi-threaded rendering, you untick it, and you scroll down some more and you find minimum API level, and you set that to Android 7.0. A bit more for Android. you just go back on that and you go on resolution and presentation, and you find default orientation and you just set it to portrait instead of auto rotate. This just keeps it from rotating randomly, because if you want it to keep in portrait mode, you can set it to that, or if you want it to stay in horizontal, you can also do that. And here you just go on File, Build Settings, click on Add Open Scenes. This step's important because if you don't add open scenes when you build, it basically just builds nothing. So you need to add a scene to it. Then click on Android, switch platform, and it will switch the platform. It might take a bit. When that's done, go back to File, Edit, Project Settings and Player. And on the left, there's an XR plugin management. You just tick the AR core. Make sure that's ticked. That's it for Android. For iOS, it's a bit different. I think if you go to Edit, Project Settings, Player, there's an iOS tab. So there's stuff like Auto Rotate. I'll set that to Portrait. And in other settings, there's a few settings such as camera usage description. I think you just write whatever the application's called. This just tells the iPhone, like, this is what the application is running and the camera's called. I just think AR project or whatever. I think that's for the iPhone. And then in File, Build Settings, it's the same as for Android, where you add an open scene and then you click Switch Platform. You can do the same. And you just wait for it to do its thing. Just waiting for it to change everything to be able to be on iOS. Then I'm just going to go quickly to the project settings to see. Yeah. You can change it from gamma to linear, I think, because it just looks better. But if you want to keep it in gamma, you can keep it there. Just going to change it to linear.
Wait, can you tell us a little bit about what the two settings are, Michael?
I think gamma's just sort of more like a more performance-based lighting system, I think. I'm not quite sure. So it might be better on performance, but I think lighting might look a bit better.
Right, okay.
And then to actually build, you just click on build and then put it wherever you want. So if I just go on here, I'll create a new folder, just call it iOS build. Select the folder, and it will just build it. And then that's about it for the building section. It might take different times depending on how good your PC is, but it shouldn't be too long. Just make sure that always make sure that you've pressed the add open scenes, just to make sure it's in, and it will create a new folder for you. And this has the files for iOS. For Android, it will just create an APK file that you can just connect your phone to the PC, or you can just or use a different way to bring the APK file on. For Android, I think you just run it from your phone and then that starts it. However, for iPhone, it's a bit more complicated. Okay. Ramsha, you want to take over now?
Sorry, my mic was muted. Yeah, so that's the end of our workshop for today. If we just go to what we did today, I hope you learned a little bit about what is Unity exactly, and some basic steps on how to get started with creating your own project, 3D objects, and how to change the properties of those objects. So whether that's the material, the location, the color, or like adding physical components to it, such as the colliders, etc. And then we looked a little bit about how to script in Unity, and there is a lot more you can go in depth, but we thought it would be nice to keep it a bit basic. Yeah, and then we did the AR application. So if you guys were able to follow along, it would be great if once you've got the app on your phone, if you want to take some pictures with the old Joe, and if you want to post them on social media, make sure to just tag us as well. The floor is now open, so if anyone has any questions, just feel free to put them in the chat, or you can also unmute yourself and just ask us for the next 2-3 minutes if you want. Oh, another thing I should add is, so the session was recorded, so we'll post that on our YouTube channel, as well as we'll send a link out in email to the recording if you want to just follow it along later. But yeah, that's everything from us. Michael, could you just change the slide?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so here's our social media links. Follow us on Facebook, Insta, or LinkedIn, and I'll just post a link to the Discord channel as well. Yeah, so that's in the chat. Oh. Yeah, so if you follow us on Discord, you can see what events we've got lined up for the rest of the term as well. And if you just want to come along and play games with us, we have very regular socials where we just play Among Us or play VR games. So if you want to do that, you can just join our Discord channel. Doesn't look like anyone has any more questions. So guess that's the end of the session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.